But I'm not trying to lead it somewhere. I'm trying to either unpick this narrative that's been regularly written about the world's richest club. And
yeah,
what
but
that's
something that's never been talked about internally.
The fact they talked to 10 candidates, of which some were English. Are you one of them?
No. Really uncomfortable in the summer when we were forced to make 2 sales of 2 really talented young players, Elliot Anderson and Yakuba Minte, against our will, really, for financial reasons. And you think, why are we doing this? This just doesn't feel right. You've obviously put the question in one way. I'd be...
It's what he said, mate.
Well, yeah, you can twist words to suit any narrative.
Do you think a nation state should own a football club? For the final upfront of 2024, we're bringing you something different. We've come to the North East to talk to one of the Premier League's leading managers, a man Newcastle United hope can bring an end to their long wait for a trophy. On today's episode, we're joined by a rare breed, a Premier League manager. Beginning in the EFL, he oversaw Bournemouth's remarkable rise to the top flight. Now he's leading a new era for Newcastle United as they aim to break the mould. Some suggest he flies the flag for English coaches, and as such, is destined for the national job one day. Eddie Howe, welcome to Upfront.
Thank you, great to be
Nice to see you, mate. You must be some kind of big cheese to drag my lazy southern arse up to the freezing cold part of the north.
Well, I don't know how that happened,
well,
but it's great to host you.
What we do in these shows, I think you've seen a few of them, so you know the gist of them. It's really a discussion between us, but it's more about you, your career, where you come from, what makes you, and how we get to this point where you are. So I tried to establish very early some sort of background to your background, I suppose. You have 3 brothers and 1 sister.
Yeah.
Was it predominantly a sporting background that you came from? Were your brothers very sports-minded? Were your parents very sports-minded?
Yeah, I think a couple of my brothers were, and I think I really owe a lot to my granddad, who really pushed me into cricket, actually. Was probably the first sport that I loved before football. But as I got older, football started to dominate my life, and then I had a younger brother that went on to become a professional footballer as well. So really it was me and my younger brother together, parks, long days, getting up, cycling to the parks, spending all day there, cycling back home. So it was that kind of just love for the game that took over.
What I've seen when I talk to a lot of sports guys, both in the football sector and the boxing sector, is a lot of it comes from the desire to be involved in sports or to make a career from sports, is to some extent to escape from something. It doesn't feel that was the case for you in terms of, it seems like a relatively settled background in terms of, a stable upbringing. You describe yourself, I think, as being quite intelligent for a footballer, and you're quite academically well-balanced. So was it a driving force? Were you driven by the desire to be a footballer or a cricketer?
I think I've had a real desire to practice, which is a great thing to have. So when I visualise myself when I'm 11, 12, 13, brick wall with a football or a cricket bat and a ball, and honing my technique, really. And I think I knew that I was limited in my ability. I wasn't given a natural ability to play any sport, really. So it was all sort of self-taught or self-driven. And I knew I had to do that because I didn't, as I say, have
the natural ability.
And the natural ability or the sort of the chance. I wasn't given a privileged beginning. It was very normal upbringing, as you say, but with a lot of siblings, which made it competitive. Everything was a game. And I think that really helped me in later life, I think.
What kind of level were you at? In order to, I read that you get into the England under 21s, in 1998. So you progressed from being an academy player into the first team at 17, in amongst the elite, with people like Carragher and people of that nature that have gone on to have full international careers. So what kind of level were you at as a player?
Let me go back probably a couple of years before that. I got released by Bournemouth at 16.
Did you?
Yeah. Right. So told I wasn't good enough, and accepted it because I agreed. I didn't think I was good enough.
Right.
So I started my 6th form at a local school. So I thought it was going to be an academic route that I'd have to take. 2 months in, Bournemouth short of money, short of players, call me back for a youth team game, FA Youth Cup game at the stadium. Mel Machin, new manager, sees me play.
Old Norwich player, right?
Yeah, goes, who's that? I like him. We go, well, he's not good enough. We've released him, actually, but he's just playing because we're short on players. He goes, sign him immediately. And so it sort of seems your
How did you react to that rejection? How did you react to that rejection in the first place?
No, I was fine because I sort of agreed. So I was like, yeah, I'm sure I'm not going to make it. And it might be a blessing in disguise that I can concentrate on studying.
Right.
But then when they offered me the chance and they said, look, there's a YTS apprenticeship if you want one. I had a big decision to make because obviously then I wouldn't be studying and I had to commit, and my character would be that I'd commit lock, stock.
And back yourself, yeah.
Yeah, and go, right, I've got to make this work. So I think, again, that was a really good learning experience for me. The rejection, dealing with it, then coming back and not holding a grudge, just going, no, I'll take the opportunity and see what I can do with it. And I was really lucky. I had some great coaches. Mel Machin backed me to the hilt. He saw something in me. And yeah, then I had a really steep rise from being rejected to first team, under 21s recognition. And I was surprising myself really with what I was doing at that stage.
Right. But you know, as you say, you know, obviously people are seeing things in you, you're developing, you're getting called up, you're getting recognised. But you seem to stay, or you don't, you're not seem, you do, you stay with Bournemouth for 8 years. So you're now at a stage where, you're 25 years of age and you're still at Bournemouth. What's that about? Is that about you being comfortable in that space? Is it about you not having particularly lofty ambitions? Is it about opportunity not presenting itself?
No, not at all. I think there was a 2 or 3 year period I went where I was on the verge of leaving sort of regularly.
Right.
But for one reason or another, the deal never got fully ratified. So I was close to going to Burnley, close to going to Portsmouth under Tony Pulis, close to going to Wigan. Bournemouth were financially in trouble. They needed to sell. And I think I was at a stage where I would have gone to further my career. None of those moves finally materialised. It was only until Harry took me at Portsmouth that the move happened.
For that would have been quite a good move, wouldn't it? Because I mean, obviously, I knew Milan Mandaric, and I knew that they were ambitious. You know, Merson's been signed, Todorov's in the side. You've got other players that are building to get out of the division. But also, it's even more challenging for you because it puts you on the end of a potential career-ending injury. How do you process that?
Yeah, I'm not going to say it was easy. It was really difficult. So I felt the perfect move had happened for me, materialised. I was ready to try and grab it. Portsmouth were moving at a rate of knots. They were bringing players, like top quality players in for the league that we were in. Just wanted to try and stay with that group if I could and see where my career went. Very early I knew the injury was serious. I went to see a specialist and he said, I think you're going to have to retire from this. You're not going to play football again. I was 24 at the time.
Did you accept it straight away? Or did you go, no, hold on, no, I'm not having that?
Well, I went to the meeting not expecting that. Just expecting you're going to need an operation, you'll be okay. And suddenly it was, I think you're going to have to retire. So it was like a bolt out of the blue. I was like, right, okay, what do I do next? I was like, I'm not prepared to call time on my career. I'm going to fight. I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to listen to that. I'm going to go and see someone else. So I saw 4 or 5 surgeons. I had 2 or 3 operations that didn't work. And then it was only when I went to America to see the world-renowned surgeon, Richard Stedman. Who's now passed away.
In Colorado, right?
He was unbelievable.
Yeah, he did Eddie Howe's knee.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he got worse after it, but that's a different discussion.
But he was really honest. He said, look, you will come back.
Yeah.
But you won't be the same player. I can't tell you in what way, but you just won't be as good. Again, I refused to accept that. I was like, no, I'm not. I sort of bypassed that bit. He said, I'm going to play again. And that's the only bit that I heard. But he was 100% right. I wasn't the same player. I was nowhere near the level that I was before. But I carried on sort of through desire and determination for a few more years.
Are you starting to turn your mind to other opportunities that might manifest themselves, i.e. coaching?
The honest answer is no, which might surprise you really with what's happened afterwards. But at the time I was so focused on playing, I was so focused on coming back, so focused on trying to play for Portsmouth still at the time, before obviously I became aware that was miles away from me. It was really step by step. There wasn't a long-term vision of it, right, I'm going to retire at this stage and what am I going to do next? I was working day to day, and then sort of the realization hit me when I started to get all sorts of multiple injuries off the back of the one injury that I got, that this is going to end. And it was only when Kevin Bond, who had been at Portsmouth with Harry, became Bournemouth manager, that I had any thought of becoming a coach. So I'm really indebted to him for giving me an opportunity.
Because you go back to Bournemouth, don't you? And you soldier on for a few years, and then you go with Kevin, and it creates this window of opportunity. So was it an easy transition for you?
No, it wasn't. I think the hardest transition for me was for me to think that I could do it. I was, and I've said this before in other interviews, I was very shy. Although I'd captained Bournemouth There's a difference. So captain in Bournemouth as a player and being a leader or a leader figure as a player, I found easy. But the thought of then coaching and leading training sessions and setting my demand upon players, I found uncomfortable initially.
Why?
You've got to go on, you've got to go on coaching courses. You've got to go through a process to educate yourself as a coach. I was well aware that I wasn't going to wake up one day and become, right, now I'm a coach. You have to go through a whole learning process, and you have to be prepared to dedicate yourself to that. That the work wasn't a problem, but it was almost, is this suited to my personality?
Yeah.
I'm not sure it is. So I was very reluctant to start. It was only Kevin that was sort of pushing me to do it. And at the start, he was very good with me. He didn't force me to take training sessions before I was ready. I was very much giving him information really on the player's perspective initially. And then it was through time, an experience, I was like, no, I really enjoy this. I really can see myself doing this. So as that period was absolutely vital in my learning to know that I was prepared to do the work, and I felt I could be good enough to give something back.
By the construct of quirk and fate, in 2008, you come back, Kevin Bonds made you part of his coaching framework. He's lost his job. You've gone out with him. Jimmy Quinn's come in. Jimmy Quinn's brought you back. He's lost his job, so maybe you might be a bog for these guys. But you get the opportunity to become the manager of the team. And it's in a very difficult time. But at that point, are you now ready to be a manager?
No. I felt I hadn't been coaching long enough. So I was 31. I felt underqualified, especially in Bournemouth's position.
Right.
This is the future.
To firefight, yeah.
This is the future of the football club. We were told if Bournemouth go down, the club folds. Like, no doubt, it's going to cease to exist. And then they say, right, we want you to be manager. I'm like, nah, I'm not comfortable with that responsibility on my shoulders, and I don't feel I'm qualified or ready to do it. So I agreed to do the first game as a caretaker. We lost that game. I agreed to do the second game. We lost that game. I'm now thinking, get me out of here. The Bournemouth fans booed the second performance. I'm thinking, that's me done. I'll go back to what I was doing in the academy. So I was in charge of the Centre of Excellence for a month. More than happy doing that job, learning. And Adam Murray, who was then the chairman of the club, said, right, we're going to name you manager on Monday permanently. And I was like, are you mad? Like,
okay.
I can't do it. I can't take that responsibility. He's like, I've seen an upturn in performances. The players are playing for you.
The results will come.
Yeah, results will come. We want you to be the manager. And in the end, I did genuinely try to change his mind. And then I just thought, Adam believes in me.
Right.
It's a great opportunity. Let's look at the positive. You can see the negative. You could be the guy that leads Bournemouth to oblivion, or you could be the guy that saves the club. So let's grab it.
So 2008-9, you keep Bournemouth in the division. 9-10, you get them promoted. 10-11, they stabilise in League One. Then you're starting to get indexed to jobs, and clubs are looking at you. I think I'd just gone from Palace, so I think Palace were looking at you, Burnley were looking at you, and Charlton Athletic were looking at you. And you tell everybody on the 11th of January, you're staying at Bournemouth, right? You've got the Mick Beale disease. Yet you go a week later to Burnley.
Yeah.
Now, for someone that I would imagine has a great deal of integrity, what's that about? Why are you saying on one hand you're staying at Bournemouth, a club that's given you an opportunity that you're doing well at, and then 5 minutes later, you're out of the door quicker than a quick thing from Quickland?
Yeah, but it wasn't quite as clear as that at the time. I know you do, but there was a lot of internal discussions then at the time with the chairman, Eddie Mitchell, myself. Eddie was a very emotional person, very driven for the club, but we didn't always see eye to eye, and there's no criticism of Eddie. Like, he did an unbelievable job for Bournemouth, but it was quite a turbulent relationship. So in the end, due to circumstances, I decided I had to leave. Right.
So you go to Burnley, and I've talked about you at Burnley on a number of occasions. I've talked about you on a variety of things, and we'll cover some of this in this discussion. And I made the observations without knowing you that your stint at Burnley, which I don't think was a huge success, and I always likened it, probably unfairly, but I likened it to Kirbishley at Charlton, where clearly you were a progressive manager at Bournemouth, and clearly you were operating in a way that the club was advancing, and maybe it's because it was a space that you were comfortable in. You were head cook and bottle washer, and everything was very familiar to you. And then you go to Burnley, which is perhaps a bigger setup with different ambitions, and it didn't work out. Is that a really unfair analysis?
I don't think it's totally unfair. I think I'd say on the Burnley situation, I learned so much from that 18 months, which has helped me as a manager.
Like what?
Like dealing with a very experienced changing room. They've just been relegated from the Premier League, so there's a big expectation, as you say, to get back up
again.
And we never really clicked. We never got the momentum and a consistent run of wins that we needed and wanted. In part, I think I made mistakes. When I went in there, I wanted to change things probably too quickly. I didn't maybe lean on the experienced players enough. I was in a hurry to change everything for the better. But sometimes you need to do it.
Did you have your team of people that you have?
Yeah,
well, you had Jason with you at the time.
I had Jason with me.
Right.
Nowadays, that would be seen like a skeleton. I think it was me, Jason, and the sports scientist, John, who we'd employed previously at Bournemouth.
Right.
There was the three of us, which is a skeleton. And when you're trying to impose your philosophy and your ideas, probably 2 coaches isn't enough, but that's no excuse. That was the lay of the land, and we agreed to go. Great football club, brilliant people, no regrets on going. We just couldn't get it going. We did sign a lot of players that went on to do well for Burnley. But I didn't see, like Danny Ings, when I signed him, he got injured straight away. He went on to do really well, Sam Vokes, Charlie Austin. So I think we made some good signings, but we never benefited from that from the time there.
They were surprised, though, weren't they, that you upped and left?
Who?
The champion.
Oh, Burnley.
Mike Garlick, At Burnley, there was a surprise factor, and you make a decision to leave Burnley and go back to Bournemouth, which prima facie looks like a kind of unambitious scenario. You're going from a club that's tilting towards the Premier League to a club where you've been before. I'm wondering if the same personalities and the same issues that were at Bournemouth before were still there, and you've gone back there because maybe it's a comfortable shoe that you know fits quite well. Or is there more to it than that?
No, there's a lot more to it than that. So I made a decision to go back to Bournemouth based on my family situation rather than any career-driven move. I knew it would be very perceived negatively media-wise. Mm-hmm. So I go from a club that's stable in the Championship to a club that I think was second bottom in League One. So that's just on league position, that's a backward step. Yep. But for me, I didn't even think about the decision. It was something I had to do. So I'd lost my mum in the March of that year. And really suddenly. So I had no time to process what had happened, no time to grieve. I sort of, as the months went by following that moment, realised that I was working, but working sort of quite numbly.
Right.
I had family issues back in Bournemouth that weren't being resolved. I was sort of the leader of the family, and I felt I needed to be there for my siblings and various family members. It was a really difficult situation. So in the end, I asked Burnley sort of permission, can I go back, please? And it's not a footballing decision. It's not a money move. Obviously, I was taking less money. It was purely for that reason. And I thought they were really good. You know, they understood there was nothing that they could say to make me change my mind. This was something I had to do.
Now, you go into a period of really great significant success for Bournemouth, because not only do you go back and correct it in terms of taking it away from being bottom of the table, you take it on a period of great success, a success that's probably unprecedented for this club. You know, you look back over the annals of time and you remember Ted McDougall and players that played for Bournemouth, but you don't look at Bournemouth as a side that's progressing through the divisions in the way that you got it to do. What were you doing to take a side like Bournemouth with limited resources out of League One into the Championship, and out of the Championship into the Premier League?
We carried on where we left off, really. There was, and there is always no magic formula. It's a series of things that you have to do well. So again, our fitness levels were through the roof. We played in partnerships. We were really fortunate. I think we had a great squad of players and built relationships that were almost telepathic through our training. And a desire, I think, to make history. A desire to change the club's fortunes forever. That was a big driver for us. Bournemouth had never been in the Premier League. And so that really did drive the players. And it was an unbelievable time, as you say. We surprised ourselves to a degree with what we were doing. The players were performing above the level, really, that they were capable of playing. But they were a brilliant group of people to work with.
When you got promoted, I know what I felt like when we got promoted as the owner. And I remember what I said to the manager, which was, I went in there with ambition and no fear and a sense of entitlement. I think I've spent enough money. I'm not grateful for being here. I want to be here. But what's it like for you as somebody that's now taken this club from the bottom of the bottom in 2 stints into the Premier League? Did you go into it with this feeling that I'm not intimidated by this league? I'm a Premier League manager now, and I'm going to prove the fact that I am a Premier League manager. Did you go in with that attitude, and what was the biggest differences that you noticed between the Championship and the Premier League?
I think we did go in not with an arrogant attitude at all, but I think we went in with an attitude of, right, let's upset a few people, let's surprise a few people. Because I think on our journey through the leagues, even League One, we weren't a big name in League One, so we surprised teams. Championship, we definitely surprised teams. We weren't a fancy team. When we arrived at grounds, it was almost like the opposing supporters felt, wow, we should win today.
Yeah.
And so that was always to our advantage, and we tried to use it. But even more so in the Premier League. So when we're going wherever we were playing, there was an expectation on the home team if we were playing away.
Do you like that? Do you like being the underdog?
Well, I think that was so powerful, and we had to use it.
Yeah.
We had to use whatever we had, whatever tools we had to our advantage. We had to absolutely use everything. So it was underestimating us, surprising teams with a sort of a no-fear attitude. That's what we tried to get across to the players. We also tried to get across we didn't want to be a different team to what we were in the Championship. That had led us to the promotion we'd had. We played some brilliant football. To go away from that, to deviate that, to show fear and become something totally different, I think would have been a huge failure of everything that we'd achieved. So we decided very early that we're gonna stick to it.
Right.
If we're not good enough, we accept it. But I think we can be. And ultimately that proved correct.
Because that's a really interesting dynamic, because there's so much made now of teams going up, so much made of philosophies and ideologies and the way to play. And we've seen in recent seasons, managers going up and sticking, we're seeing one now at this moment in time with Southampton, with Russell Martin coming under a little bit of media scrutiny about the way that they're playing. I saw it last year, specifically with Burnley, where, Vincent Kompany, I felt, was almost committing acts of self-harm with his side, becoming the 12th man for the opposition, yet managed to get a job as a result of that with Bayern Munich. Is it something that you believe has to be fundamentally stuck with? Or do you believe that ultimately pragmatism is part of the equation?
Well, I think for me, but having been in that position and having to make those decisions, the style that we played with suited the players. We'd rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed and really worked to get to that point. The players knew what I wanted from them.
Yeah.
So for me to have changed would have been alien to the players. The players then look at me going, we didn't really believe enough in what he was talking about last season. Now we've become a totally different team. We're not playing to my strengths anymore. I think very quickly a sea of negativity would have then swept over the group. So that doesn't mean that you're not pragmatic at times and you're not, the result is always the most important thing. But then how are you giving yourself the best chance of getting that result? For me, that was sticking to what we did. And that doesn't mean we didn't come under criticism. I was very aware that people said we needed to change, media, etc. But the most important thing I felt was between me and the group of players. Are we together in this? Are we agreed this is what we're going to do? And let's go and make it work. And if we do get beaten and we do suffer disappointments, we just have to improve what we're delivering, not totally rip it up and change.
But if you're getting beat week in, week out, and you're playing a style, whether it's playing out from the back and ultimately creating problems for yourself because of players, despite being able to do that in the Championship, it is a big step up to the Premier League. You are playing against players that are far more technically better, and if you make one mistake, they're going to punish you. And what I'm trying to get at is, it feels to me that sometimes with football managers that they're so wedded to a philosophy, it almost defines them, that they see it as a weakness or almost an insult to say, well, actually, I've got to pivot off this, not because I want to disarm the playing squad, not because I want to send a message to them, but I don't want to get relegated, neither does my owner.
Well, I think it depends on your own philosophy. I can only talk about mine.
Yeah.
So mine and Jason's philosophy, because I included both of us in that, it's organic to us. It's been our own way, and we've molded through time. We've changed, definitely changed through the seasons and experiences, and it leads you to where you are at that moment. And at that moment, it was, we always tweak things during a game. It's not to say that we're robotic enough to say there's just one solution to a problem. There's various solutions. You just got to think, and maybe you can mold and change. But the principles, when you go to a training session, you've got the group of players there, you're not suddenly ripping it up and going, right, I'm going to get you to do something totally different to what we did yesterday. That brings confusion, and that brings a backward step, in my opinion. But it doesn't mean you can't to answer your question,
Adjust.
tweak and adjust and change, but subtly and not the big things. I think the big things have to stay.
I know that you want to be diplomatic, but what did you honestly think about Vincent Kompany getting Burnley relegated, a club that you managed for a period of time, and going and getting Bayern Munich's job?
Honestly, I was delighted for him. For me, Vincent at Burnley did an unbelievable job with the resources and the players that he had. And there is an admiration for me to see someone stick to their guns. And I know that there's two ways to battle that argument. Mm-hmm. But to see the strength of character, to go, no, this is what we're going to do, and I really believe in it. And then to be given a job to go, right, okay, now what are you going to do with some of the best players in the world? Can you make it work with them? Like you did with Burnley in the Championship. And I got a lot of respect for him. I think he's an incredible guy, great leader. Hope he does well.
Do you think that getting Burnley relegated is a bit of a failure?
I don't think it matters what I think.
Well, I'm asking you because I'm supposed I'm leading to the question that does it prove by Vincent getting a job at Bayern Munich that you can fail and still get promoted up?
Well, definitely.
The reason why I'm asking is, do you think that's why I'm saying? Do you think it's a failure to get Burnley relegated? If you don't, then the answer is almost moot.
No, I understand the question, but I think this is a really important question for managers. Managers can fail. It doesn't mean they're bad managers. You can have you can have a difficult time, you can have a difficult month, you can have a difficult season. The main thing, and I know it's a bit of a cliche, the main thing that I think is how you respond to that. How do you face it?
Yeah.
But it's easy to say, but the reality is delivering it is harder.
Well, that's what defines leaders, though, isn't it? I mean, ultimately,
but it is.
Everyone's a mate and everyone gets on when everyone's going well, right? It's about how you react to adversity.
But it is, but in football management, there's this, you can't fail. And if you do fail, you need to be pushed to the scrap. So for me, that's how I would answer that question about any failure from a manager. The failure will be disappointing to you personally, but you've got to find a way to come back if that's what you want to do.
Get over it. So why, when Bournemouth get relegated, do you not decide to stay? What was the thinking behind deciding to leave Bournemouth when they got relegated? Because you'd already during that year, you'd done something I thought which was fabulously magnanimous. You'd taken a pay cut during COVID, which most of your creed didn't want to do. So it shows the index that you have to the club and the respect you have for it. So why would you not decide that I've got to get this club back?
Yeah, for me it was clear. I had reached the end of my time there. Right. There was no doubt in my head. I'd been feeling that way for. I didn't just wake up one day and feel that way. I felt I'd given so much to the job. It was obviously the COVID season that made it, I think, doubly difficult. For me, that was one of the reasons why we got relegated. We lost the power of our crowd. Now, You can say that's an excuse, but our crowd at Bournemouth was so inspirational to us. That was a big deflating feeling. That was one of my big things, disappointments. I never got to say goodbye to the supporters at the time. But the big thing for me that made me decide that, there was, I think, a 2-week break between the end of the season finishing and then, because of COVID, the new season started straight away.
Right.
I was like, I just don't have the
energy,
the feeling and the energy to go straight back to work. And I'd be doing a disservice to Bournemouth if I carried on. And that was always in my thoughts. Like, I love the club so much and I'm so grateful to everything the people at Bournemouth had given me. I owed them honesty and clarity. So I was like, I can't carry on.
You then go through a period of being out for about a year. What are you doing in that period?
Well, initially I thought, right, I'm going to stay away from football. And it literally was, and I know this sounds quite dramatic, but it was a spell of grieving for me. Grieving for leaving Bournemouth, leaving for the fact we got relegated.
Yeah. Leaving of your own choice, though.
Yeah, but there's still, with leaving, there's a lot of emotions. You know, you're leaving people that you love, you're detaching yourself from something. You're in a routine as a manager. Your structure of your day is there, and suddenly you go, for the first time in a long, long time in my life, I've gone to no structure. So that's, you've got to adjust to that. So I think there was probably a period of a month to 2 months where I was adjusting to that. Then I thought, right, let's do something else. I don't have to be a football manager. I can be whatever I want to be. I'm still young enough. Let's see what there is out there. And I then quickly realised I can't do anything else. I've got, the thought was,
but that's not true.
But I've got to train to do something else. I've got to give the energy to properly commit to another job or another.
A bit of pundit.
I could have, I tried that for a period of time and I enjoyed it for probably a couple of months, and then sort of the novelty wore off and I was like, that's not for me. So then I was left, right, I think I've got to get back to work, but not back to work to get a job, back to work developing myself so I come back better. So I think 2 months of sort of rest. And then the rest of the time in between taking a job again, I was developing myself ready for
By
action.
doing what?
Visiting any organisation, any workplace that I felt could help me in my management skills. So that's rugby clubs, boxing gyms, football clubs, obviously. But looking outside of football for inspiration, I had really big help from my agent, Dean Baker, who sort of opened up a few doors for me to speak to people. I was indebted to his support during that period. And I had a great time, and I was enjoying it. I didn't really feel a rush to get back to work. I'd set myself a year minimum. I'm not going to work in a year, and I was going to stick to that regardless of
Really?
who came. Yeah. So I knew that's what I needed. And then beyond that, I'd wait and see what opportunities came up.
And you get a big opportunity, with all due respect to Bournemouth. You get Celtic come in the door. And I remember opining on it at the time. I didn't opine on it in a very complimentary way, because I felt that you bottled it. It's one way of putting it.
So what you really think?
No, absolutely. I felt that the Celtic job is a massive job in football. It comes with its own pressure that you're in a two-horse league, and ultimately you've got to win. There's no alternative. And it felt to me like you didn't fancy it for that reason. You know, Celtic obviously thought quite highly of you, and if you look at what they said at the time, it looked like alighting upon you for a big job, a job with European football attached to it, a job with scale and recognisability around the world. So put aside the baiting observation of me saying that you bottled it. What was the reason that you wouldn't have taken on such a big job like Celtic?
Yeah, so during that period that I'd had out, obviously I'd had a few job offers, but I'd said I'm not considering anything to a year. That year had passed, and Celtic came up, and I was immediately attracted to the job. I thought, wow, what an opportunity,
Sure.
What a football club. Great people as well. The people I met were unbelievable. So there was no downside for me, but I had to get my staff together. And for me, that if I was to go into a football club, I could have gone in on my own. So I could have gone to Celtic on my own and gone, right, I'm going to work with the staff that are there. But I felt for my first job back, that would have been a big...
Even with all this new acquired knowledge that might have superseded the coaching staff that you had before, because it was new knowledge?
Yeah, no, I felt I needed to go in at my strongest. And my strongest would have been with my team. So that's Jason Tindall, Stephen Purchase, Simon Weatherstone, Dan Hodges. These are important people to me. So I'd sort of made my decision. I was really keen to go. Jason had left Bournemouth, but I couldn't get them together.
Right.
I couldn't get the team to all agree. And it wasn't necessarily I needed every single one of them, but of course that's an important dynamic. And I didn't feel that was right for me to take the opportunity. In that moment would have been wrong for Celtic as well, I think. So I declined the offer.
So it's grotesquely unfair, my observation then.
Well, it is, yeah, but that's what happens in the media, doesn't it? You jump to conclusions, and I heard that, and you have to accept it. You can't fight it.
So your management mantra is somewhat similar to my thinking, which is you get places because of people rather than in spite of them. But would you attribute a lot of the success you have as a result of the team that you've got around you?
100%.
Yeah.
And that's why, for me, the Celtic job I just couldn't take. I knew if I was to get back into management, I needed to go with my team to give myself the best chance and ourselves the best chance of being successful. You know, me and Jason, we've got this telepathic understanding. There's a great feeling and dynamic. Now, since going to Newcastle, you can add Graham Jones to that list, who's become an integral part of my team. Mm-hmm. Stephen Purchase, everyone plays a role that has tangible results to our success. And so it's definitely not about me. I mean, I'm the one here in front of the cameras, and someone has to take that role on, and I'm proud to do it, but these guys are invaluable to me.
The Newcastle job, if you couldn't have got your boys together, would you have taken the Newcastle job?
No, I don't think I could have done. I honestly don't. So I needed the strength. Because, again, I could have gone into that job on my own. I could have taken that, but I don't think we'd have had the results that we've had. I think that would have been very, very different situation.
But that's hindsight now. I'm asking you about would you have taken it without your team? Because
I've answered it. I don't think I could have.
You don't think you would have done it? No. Did you apply for the job at Newcastle? Did they come knocking for you?
I don't really know. I think it was a bit of both. I'm not evading the question. I don't remember.
Did it bother you that potentially the job was Unai Emery's, and he turned it down. Does that sort of thing bother you in any shape or form?
Not the slightest. I got given a phone call to say, I knew it was a 2-horse race in the end between me and Unai's someone that has got an unbelievable CV. So as soon as I knew there was 2 of us, I knew I'd lost because of the other guy, and his CV is unbelievable. So I'm like, so I sort of knew what was going to happen. I then got the call to say that, unfortunately, we're going to go in a different direction. And I understood. There was no ill feeling or grudges. And then when I got the call the next day, I was just delighted. You know, what a moment, what an opportunity for me.
Did you have any reservations?
None.
None whatsoever?
No.
I'm very friendly with Graham Souness, as you probably know, and Graham talks about Newcastle in a certain way, which is a very difficult club to manage because of the expectations. And the fans will bristle, I know, about all they want is a team that's worthy of watching, right? And they don't have unrealistic expectations. But he would describe it as winning a game is a necessity, losing a game is a catastrophe. Did you have any reservations about going into Newcastle, given the backdrop that had been, say, building around Brucey previously to that, where he was targeted and there was a lot of vitriol about his performance? Did you have any reservations whatsoever going into that environment?
No, I had no reservations about taking the job at all. As I said, I think you always have fears. I don't know if that's the right word, but you always have anxieties, yeah, and things you think, well, what's going to happen here? What's going to happen here? And of course, you're human. You know, you're going to have those feelings when you go into a new football club. You've got to prove yourself all over again. You've got to set your intention. You've got to try and inspire people. You've got to bring the club together. So these are all things that are in my head. But there was no doubt on, or should I take this opportunity? I knew that there wouldn't be another one that would be like this. This was a game changer, and fate would have it that I got the opportunity, and I came up here with no doubts.
You're going into this job and into discussions to become the first manager of this new Saudi regime. What are these guys telling you when you're walking through the door and you're speaking to them about Newcastle and what their vision of it is? What are they telling you that they want? What are you walking into? I mean, at that time, keep us in the division. I got that, but that
you just stole my answer.
No, I know that, but they would have been telling you more than that.
Not really. I'd obviously gone through an interview process where I'd explain my vision and what I see, how I would train the players, what would I do. So I'd given them sort of my vision of what was going to happen. For them, they didn't.
Which was what?
Well, obviously the style of play, etc., and
get you out of the cart and then build from there.
Yeah, but it was obviously they liked what they heard because I ended up getting the job. So, but from me asking the club, I knew that the remit was stay in the Premier League. That was made very, very clear to me. It's stay in the Premier League at all costs, and this is going to be tough. Then we can speak about what happens afterwards. But I was very aware that if I didn't succeed, then there probably wouldn't be a next year for me.
Right.
So
they weren't discussing with you. I mean, a whole furore of you've now got what was expected to be with the personnel that were involved, put stably to one side, but the PIF fund with the Reuben brothers and all that was there, the level of scale that was coming into this football club, there was no discussion with you about the long-term vision and long-term opportunity for this club.
It wasn't the time or the place to sort of talk about long-term visions. I mean, that's all well and good, but when you're where we were in the Premier League, where's the value in that? That's for another day.
It would have formed part of your thinking, wouldn't it? Because if I'm sitting there talking to you, right, saying, listen, I'm in the bottom 3 here and we're having a shit time. We've got a good enough squad to be out of it. I want you to get me out of it. But also, here's my desire for this football club. I'm bringing you in not to just get me out of the car. I'm bringing you in to take me away from this current problem and to build me up to a team that achieves my ambition. And you're saying that they had none of that to say to you.
No, it's not to say that there wasn't a long-term plan. Of course there was. But my early discussions with Amanda, Merdad, the Reuben brothers, as you say, PIF, was all about the short-term need. And that was really because we were November, January coming up. So talking about long-term plans would have been redundant. It's about what we're going to do in January. What do we need? Who can we get to help us in our current position? We knew then if we could do that, there would be a future and there would be a long time to discuss the future plans. But that wasn't the moment.
All right. Do you think a nation state should own a football club?
I'm not going to go there. I made a decision very early. Of course, I was aware of the Saudi links to the club and the ownership details to make a football decision. And I've said this in many interviews. I came for Newcastle Football Club for the players, for the supporters. I'm aware of the political side of it, but I don't get involved in it. I don't think it's right for me to comment on it. So I've just that's the
No, it's a
update.
loaded question. I know it is. I know it's a difficult one for you to ask, or for you to answer, not for me to ask.
Because all I can say, Simon, on it is
you've chosen to be working
course.
for them, so you've made that decision.
But all I can say on it, the people that I've met who represent the club have represented the club in a brilliant way. They care about the club.
Yeah.
And that's all I can judge is,
Absolutely.
is those people.
I mean,
and
it's a
they've been
loaded
brilliant.
question to get an answer out of you. I mean, my view is that I'm troubled by it, not because of any particular relationship or concerns about Gulf money or American money or whoever's money it is. I worry about the state of the game. I worry about the motivations behind people that are owning football clubs, and I don't see it being replicated in other countries. And I'd be very surprised if we went over to Saudi and Englishmen were allowed to buy national assets of the Saudis. So it's a concern that I have, and I think a lot of people in football have it because it's changing the direction. But did it ever come into your thinking that you might be questioned about the morality side of the ownership model and the fact you were working under that?
I knew I'd be questioned, of course, and I prepared myself for that. But
You didn't seem to be prepared for it.
I'd beg to differ on that. I mean, I don't think there was a time when I could give a correct answer that anyone would accept. My decision-making at the time was based purely on football. Of course, I was aware of the political situation, but I decided that shouldn't interfere with my decision and my career.
Did you think there were unfair questions then to ask a football manager?
Yeah, I did, yeah. But I think I was put in an impossible position. No matter what I said would have been critiqued negatively against me.
When you've gone through that season, and most people, the first season at Newcastle, most people felt that you were done. Newcastle, not you personally, Newcastle were done, not you, obviously not.
Just arrived.
No, the manager's, he's done. Yeah.
Get another one.
That's what a lot of managers got to think about with me when they lasted for 5 minutes. But most people, conventional wisdom was suggesting that you guys were done. You had a very good January transfer window. You didn't start I think you lost to Cambridge in the Cup, didn't you? And then you've found your feet. You made some good signings that have gone on to actually be very good signings for other clubs as well, specifically the centre forward now, banging them in at Nottingham Forest. You sauntered away. I'm sure it wasn't sauntering, but you got away from it. There was after a very short period of time, you were no longer in jeopardy, and you stabilised Newcastle at the end of that season where relegation was not even a consideration with 3 or 4 games to go. What was then the discussion like with Newcastle about the direction of travel?
Yeah, so I understand you're trying to lead it somewhere, but the reality was very calm. It was very step by step. I mean, that's why I can say with absolute certainty.
But I'm not trying to lead it somewhere. I'm trying to either unpick this narrative that's been regularly written about the world's richest club. And what that means.
That's something that's never been talked about internally. It's never been, we're the world's richest club, right? How much money are we going to spend? It's, we want to build Newcastle step by step. We want to do things in the right way. We want to make good decisions for the short term and the long term. There's not an endless pot of money here. We've got to make very good decisions on recruitment. We want to invest in the academy. So for me, the decision making on behalf of the football club from the leaders of the football club has been brilliant.
Sure.
But the media have created richest club.
Understood.
Going to spend, going to buy Messi, Neymar.
Yeah, I've ordered that cobblers as well.
And it was so far away from the reality. And that's where I'm trying to paint it.
All right, mate. But how does that chime with Amanda coming out, which is where you might think I was going to take it in the first place, with Amanda coming out after you lose the League Cup final, we're going to win the lot. We're going to win the Premier League. We're going to win the Champions League. We're going to win the FA Cup. You know, she missed out the FIFA World Club Championship because perhaps it wasn't on her radar.
Yeah.
But 2 things. That is a vision.
Yeah.
So is that what they're building towards? And also, how did it make you feel where you hear an owner saying that sort of thing?
Well, that absolutely is the vision, and that's been made clear from not just Amanda, but from several other people at board level. There is big long-term ambitions, but I think they understand now with the rules in place that is a long-term vision. It's not a short-term vision. How did it make me feel? Well, obviously it increases the pressure on me, doesn't it? And
of course.
So I think whenever those comments are made, there's a part of me that goes, oof.
I wish you hadn't done that.
Yeah, to a degree, but then that's Amanda. Amanda's so passionate, was so good for the football club, I can't tell you. And caring for the people who are working at the football club, that you almost go, well, that's Amanda. And so there was no part of me that went, you shouldn't have said that. It was just, that's part of the...
So I've got the long-term vision of you in then, right?
Well, I would never have denied it. What I'm saying is that wasn't, when I first came in, that wasn't talked about.
The second season, which I thought you were brilliant in, and it changed my perhaps ill-informed views of you, that I felt that you would, and I've made comments, and we're going to address those comments in a minute if you want to, about you being a gatekeeper. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I'm not seeking to offend, but
I've never heard that one.
But you've not heard me say that?
No, I've not heard that.
Oh, fine, okay, then I wish I hadn't mentioned it. I could have got slipped away with it. Right? But I figured that you might have heard it, so I thought I'd get it out there. Right? But you have this brilliant season in your second season. I remember becoming so interested in what you were doing when you played Man City early in that season, where you really stuck it on Man City. And it was a brilliant game. And all of a sudden you became almost, I know it's overused, but you became like a lot of people's second favourite team, because you were attacking, you were ambitious, you were easy on the eye, and you were incredibly entertaining. And as a result of that, you have this brilliant season where you finish fourth in the league, you get into the Champions League. Do you run, I know the answer is you take it when it's there, but does it make it difficult for you because you become almost a victim of your own success? Because I'm not, again, directing this at Newcastle fans before they go demented about expectations, but does it make you a victim of your own success to some extent?
Yeah, I think to a degree, but I think you're absolutely right with what you said, in that you take it, you grab it. For me, in my management career, whenever there's been a chance of success, you don't turn it down. So people would have said the same thing at Bournemouth: League Two to League One to the Championship, Championship to the Premier League. Oh, you know, you're never going to survive in the Premier League. You've almost killed yourself to a degree with what you've done. But we just plough on. You plough on and try and achieve new things. And so that was very much my thought at Newcastle. It's like, let's grab it, let's embrace this opportunity. We're in the Champions League, which is incredible, and see what we can do with it.
I alluded to it earlier on, and you haven't heard it, so I haven't offended you, so I'll do it now.
Why not?
But I've said that my perception of you, and it's not a suggestion that you aren't the manager capable of achieving big things. It's my belief system based upon the ambition of the club, that there's a possibility that you might be a gatekeeper, a very fundamental and integral part of the rebuilding of Newcastle. Does it concern you? Does that price into your thinking, or is it just along the same lines of what you're thinking now and what you've been thinking all the way through, which is, I'll deal with it here and now?
Yeah, but I've always been of that mindset, because wasted emotion, wasted energy thinking, or what if I'm a gatekeeper, as you call it? What if this happens, that? Like, you can't influence it. All I can influence is trying to win games. And my best chance of staying in the role and being the guy that can take the club forward long term is to win matches. So all my focus, all my energy goes on that. And I'm a great believer in the end result will be the end result. All I can do is give my best.
Do you envisage in your mind's eye lifting something major with Newcastle?
I always have done. I made it clear when I came here that was my dream. That was my personal dream, to try and bring some silverware to this unbelievable club. It's been too long. There's a desire from everyone internally to make that happen. We came close.
Yeah.
We want to go closer.
Do you think it can be done, Eddie? I mean, I believed that PSR was brought in to stabilise the markets. I don't believe that anymore. I believe it's part of a mechanism to keep those that are already there, and to shut the trap door so that other people can't join the big six, or whatever the terminology is at the time. If there isn't a changing of the rules, can you really see Newcastle being able to do what, to a lesser degree, Jack Walker did at Blackburn, certainly Roman Abramovich did at Chelsea, Manchester City have been able to do, and now it would appear that trapdoor, or that drawbridge has been pulled up? And if you're at Newcastle with £300 million turnover, and Man City are at 600 or 700 million, and United, even when they're asleep at the wheel, are 500 or 600 million quid, can you really see there's a window of opportunity for Newcastle, given the construct of football as it is now, breaking into that?
I think it gets more and more difficult. I do. And I think I'm a believer that anything can happen and anything is possible. And Leicester proved in a one-off season that if you get everything right, you can still do unbelievable things, and I stick to that. I still believe if we got everything right and had the season of our lives, we could achieve unbelievable things. That drives me. But I think to do that consistently under the current rules, probably not.
Do you agree with the rules? I don't.
No,
I don't. I think football clubs should be able to invest within reason. I don't think there's a problem in the Premier League. I don't know what we're fixing besides destroying ultimately the most investable league in the world and making people breach profitability by creating PSR.
Yeah, I felt really uncomfortable in the summer when we were forced to make 2 sales of 2 really talented young players, Elliot Anderson and Yakuba Minte, against our will, really, for financial reasons. One of them being an academy product we'd invested since he joined the club as a young lad. And you think, why are we doing this? This just doesn't feel right. So from that viewpoint, I don't think... I understand the rules to a degree. I understand what the concept, but I think how it's fundamentally working at the moment is not right.
You can't have a league where teams are suing the league and fighting with one another and spending all their time in court. That's not what sport's about, and that's not what it should be about.
The buying and selling of players has always been such a good thing for the game, as in it brings intrigue and it brings so much to the game, but now it's almost gone against that. You see trading this summer was down more than it's been down for a long time, and you think that downward trend isn't healthy for the game. So I think this purpose was to do one thing, but I think the reality has turned into something totally different.
What man you getting in Dan Ashworth?
Really smart guy, very well organised. I think Dan's biggest strength is he looks at things from top to bottom. He's very, really good problem solver. He'll work his way through things from a structural viewpoint and then rebuild them. I got on really well with him. I got a lot of time for him. Really sad to see him go, but also understood his viewpoint and wish him well.
Do you work for Paul Mitchell?
Sorry.
Do you work for Paul Mitchell?
I work with Paul Mitchell, yes.
How do you view that structure? I mean, there was controversy during the summer. Now, again, it would appear that certain people's perceptions were that Paul's observations about defined strategies and the inability to deliver certain outcomes that you wanted were a broadside at you, and you were getting thrown under a bus a little bit. So I asked the question slightly tongue-in-cheek about, do you work for Paul Mitchell? But how does that structure work for you, and how does it deliver the outcomes that you want? How do you envisage it should work, and how is it actually working?
I think it's got to be teamwork. It's got to be collaboration, and I know Paul feels the same way. So I think there was a lot of noise in the summer, and again, I understand that this is the media's job to blow everything up, to make stories. The reality is, internally, it wasn't like that. We're forming a new relationship.
What does he mean by predefined strategy? You bought good players, didn't you?
Yeah, I believe so. I'm not.
So what does that mean then?
I'm not going to shy away from the fact that I will protect or stand up for our transfer business. I think it's been really good. Excellent recruitment. I love the players that we've got. It's really difficult for me to comment on what Paul meant. Only he can sort of articulate that to you. But I think the most important thing is how we work going forward and the decisions we make in the future.
But he was saying, and you will be privy to it, and you will be diplomatic, I'm sure, and try and tap dance your way around it. But he was saying it wasn't fit for purpose because it's an implicit criticism of you and others. And I'm curious to see how that's constructive and how you view that. And I know you want to tap dance around it, but...
Well, I do want to tap dance around it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know quite what to say to that. You've obviously put the question in one way. I'd be...
It's what you said, mate.
Well, yeah, you can twist words to suit any narrative.
Okay.
I'm sure Paul didn't mean it like that, like the question that you've just asked me. So on this one, I won't give you a direct answer. I think the most important thing, as I was alluding to earlier, is how me and Paul move together in the future. Rather than looking back, it's irrelevant what happened and how we recruited players. I thought we did a good job. We've got a good squad. Now it's about what players...
Well, it won't be if your season stinks.
No, but I still wouldn't say that we've recruited poorly. I think we've recruited really well. I don't think... Unless those players obviously have a big downturn in form, but I don't see that. I think those players that we recruited have, by and large, you could always critique one or two, have done pretty well. There'll be loads of other factors determining our team's performance. But the most important thing is how we work together and how we recruit players in the future.
Was Gary your own target? Was he the only target you had?
No, he wasn't the only target. I think a lot goes on into a summer, Simon, as you know.
Yep.
You never just have one target. That wouldn't be right. We went into the summer with several targets. We tried to sign 2 or 3 other players. We didn't get them. We ended up ultimately towards the end of the window with one target, and we didn't get him. So that was it.
The FA recently filled the job with Thomas Tuchel, and I'm not a great admirer of the FA, but notwithstanding that, Bullingham talked about the fact they talked to 10 candidates, of which some were English. Were you one of them?
No.
Were you disappointed not to be one of them?
No. And that's no dig at England at all, but I'm in a job. I'm happy in a job. And to be honest, with the England
not
job...
disappointed to be... I'm not suggesting that you're not happy in your job.
No, but
I'm
I'm
not
saying...
suggesting that you're not happy.
What I was
want to
going
leave.
on to say was the media hype with England is so big that, to be honest, to be out of that is, for me, that's where I want to be. In terms of speculation, I'm talking about.
Okay, that's fine. But that's not why I asked you. Because ultimately they had 10...
You said, was you disappointed? And I was saying,
well, you're disappointed not to be... If you haven't been spoken to by the FA, because they were managed to keep a secret. No one knew they were announcing Thomas Tuchel. So it's not a given unless you and your agent and the FA want to make it public knowledge that you were spoken to by the FA. The fact that you answered the question to say that you weren't, my question was, were you disappointed? Now, you might have gone, fantastic, thank you, I'm so flattered to have been asked, but I've got a job over here, which is what you will say. Right? But I'm asking you, would you have liked to be considered and have the opportunity to say, thank you very much, no thank you?
No, because I'm not... You have to understand, you're not sitting there going and focusing on England and going, I want to be considered for the job, because I think I was away with Newcastle during pre-season when Gareth decided to leave, and suddenly there was just bombarded with...
Because a lot of people think you should have that job. I mean, do you believe you're one of the top English coaches in this country?
I find that very uncomfortable for me to say.
Why? Do you think you're useless?
I don't think I'm useless. Well, I'd like to think I'm not useless,
right.
But I find it very difficult to give you an answer on that. I just do the job to the best of my ability.
Are you comfortable
judge mine.
when people talk about you in those terms? Because I get the reasons why you don't want to say it yourself, because ultimately it's tooting your own horn, you'd prefer someone else to say it. When someone says about you, you're comfortable with it, right?
I've become more comfortable because I'm in the Premier League and managing Newcastle. So yeah, I think you have to adjust to that.
Do you think the England job is the pinnacle for an English manager?
I think it depends on your viewpoint in terms of international football. I think I'm always slightly torn with that thought because the coaching aspect diminishes when you're with a national team. Mm-hmm. Just your time with the players
it's a different
disappears.
Job. It's a different job.
So I love coaching. I've always said that. I'm not ashamed to say it. I love being on the training pitch. I love designing sessions, implementing sessions, giving feedback to players, really hands-on. So to lose that day-to-day contact is a big shift. And it's a shift that, for me, at this stage in my career, I don't want to lose. Who knows where I'll be in the future? As I say, I don't look too far ahead. That might change as I get older, but at the moment, I love the day-to-day action.
But would it be an ambition of yours at some stage, when your work is done here at Newcastle and you've achieved all the things you want at Newcastle, would it be an ambition of yours to manage England?
I'll answer this in this way. As a player, I was desperate to play for England. That was my big dream. I only got as far as the 21s. When I started management, I had no vision of the future. Genuinely, you can understand from my early conversations as when I first became a manager, I had no long-term vision. That's not really changed. I'm not set, I want to do this and I want to do this. Just want to stay and work and enjoy what I do. Be at a club that I'm proud to manage and try and win things. I don't really think beyond that.
But if the opportunity came and you had run your race at Newcastle like you did at Bournemouth and you've done your wonderful job here and you've delivered things to Newcastle and you think now, actually, I've run my race here and the England manager...
At one stage in my life, if I wanted a change of pace, then of course, the international football might be something that appeals to me in the future.
What do you think of the job Southgate did?
Unbelievable.
Why? What, get us to fit?
Because Simon, it's more than that, in my opinion. Like, I used to watch England with one viewpoint before Gareth took over, and I'm always looking at managers now from a different viewpoint. I am a manager. I'm looking at how are you going to react in this situation? What are you going to say after this game? How are you going to articulate that issue? He was, I thought, brilliant with the media. I thought the way he spoke after the game suddenly changed. We had honesty.
Yeah.
And that's no disrespect to anyone that managed England before, but he had his style.
Yeah.
And I really, really liked it. And I was gutted for England and for Gareth that he didn't get over the line and win something, because I felt for his tenure he deserved that. I thought he was absolutely brilliant for the country.
I have different views about Southgate. I think it's brilliant that he united the media. I think it's brilliant that the media's expectation was so low at the beginning because of the Iceland debacle that he had a period of time where he was given a honeymoon. I think we didn't beat anybody that we couldn't beat and shouldn't beat. And every time we stepped up against somebody on paper was either as good as us or maybe slightly better, we lost. So I differ from you, but I take your point.
But he's got to the final stages of 2 major competitions, which is something we haven't done for a long, long time.
And the draws that we had were remarkable.
But you can't.
You can only play what's in front of you.
I don't know if you can critique that.
I think that you can, but I am not. But your answer is your answer. Do you think this group of players is good enough, or more to the point, is as good as people are suggesting they are?
I think this is a really good England team, and I judge that sort of going back through the teams. And you're right, you can make a judgment going through England teams at major tournaments and go, that was a good team, that was a good team, that was a good team. England have always produced good players. And it's great to see now that we're continuing to do that, and probably more than ever. So the academy system is working, which is great to see. A lot of young, talented players that could play for England for many years. Will they go on to win a tournament? There's no guarantee. I think they've got a great manager in place now. I really like Thomas.
Do you?
I've seen him work.
Are you comfortable with the German managing England team?
Yeah, I think, again, I've said many times, I prefer the England manager to be English. Mm-hmm. But if he can't be English, go and get the best person you can to coach the team and to help us win trophies. And I think Thomas is that. As I said, I'm lucky enough to see him work. I think he's not just a great coach, he's a great person. And I think it could be a really successful time.
So by that association, English isn't the best then?
Well, I didn't make that. I was making a judgment and a statement. You've just twisted that.
What do you think the perception of English coaches? I have a perception about English coaches. I think it's morphed. I think they've gotten a lot better over the years, because I think there's been a lot of, ultimately in the past it was idiot owners brought in foreign players because they were cheaper. And now they brought in foreign managers because they're all foreign owners. But the fact of the matter is, with the exception of a few people, your present company excluded, most football clubs are either owned by a foreigner, have a foreign sporting director, a foreign manager, a foreign technical director, a foreign assistant manager, a foreign first team coach, and foreign players. Yeah. So it kind of tells me something, that most people's perception of English managers is that they're not at the elite level. And then you've got Glenn Hoddle said something recently about many of them being lazy. What do you think the perception is of English coaches?
That's a difficult one for me to answer.
Well, you're an English coach.
Yeah, but I don't spend time thinking, I wonder what the perception of English managers is. I genuinely don't. I think, I'll say a few things. I think the foreign managers coming into the Premier League, I think it's been a brilliant thing for British football. I think we have learned, as a country, we've learned a lot from them. Our players have learned a lot from them. I think they've been incredibly beneficial for English coaches to actually look and learn. If you for every foreign coach in a club, you'll have English coaches in the academy. That will all drip down. So I think we'll see a breed of English coaches in the future that will develop. I think the talent is there. Opportunity is an issue. So you see someone like Russell Martin coming to the Premier League through promotion. For me, Russell's got a great future.
McKenna as well.
Kieran McKenna through promotion. Myself through promotion.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the most reliable route into the Premier League. I think to get job opportunities is difficult. So I think that is an issue, and I think we'll always be judged against that.
What's harder for you as a manager, Eddie? Is it managing up or managing down? I think one of the key components of managers' ability to be able to be successful is the ability to manage up. But which do you find more difficult? Do you find managing up to the people that you work more difficult, or do you find managing down to your charges?
I think managing down is, got to make sure I get this right. I think managing down is hugely, hugely important, because if you don't have the players on side working in the right way, you won't get results. If you don't get results, regardless of how well you manage up, you won't stay in the job. So I think you can waste a lot of time managing upwards and neglect
The core principle.
the core principle. It's always about the players. Now, of course, you need good relationships. You need to communicate well with those above you. You need to be respectful. They need to know that you're working hard for the benefit of them and the football club with integrity. I think they're fundamental values, but I'd like to think that I'll always do that.
Who do you think should have the final say on recruitment?
I think it should be a joint decision between manager, whatever your structure is, sporting director, owners. I think everyone has to be involved. I don't think the manager should sign a player that he doesn't want.
You mean you don't think a manager should have a player forced upon him that he didn't ask for?
Better way of putting it.
I mean, I get the principle of what you're saying, which is, of course, as an owner, the economics of a decision should not be that for the manager. In terms of the owner can either afford it or he can't.
Yeah.
But the actual identification of a player, and put aside the economic side of it and how much he's paid and how much his wages are, but the actual selection process of who has the final say, if all the numbers work and everybody has that side of things in the equation and the owner's been there and the sporting director's been there and everyone's comfortable with the cost implications of it, who should have the final say on the recruitment of a player if those factors are taken out of the consideration?
I do think every club's different. Some managers don't want that responsibility. Some managers, for me, I'm hands-on. If I'm coaching a player, I need to like the ingredients of the player. I need to understand the player. They need to fit the system and the model that we play. So for me, that's hugely important that I get a player that fits that criteria. So for me, the manager has a hugely important opinion. But it's not about just the manager, because I'm not seeing these players day in, day out. Obviously, I've got a squad to coach. So if I don't take information and advice and guidance from other people, then more for me, because I can't be Superman.
Sure.
So a sort of a mixture of those opinions coming together for the right decision. That's how I think we've recruited the best players. It's been collaboration.
You're very diplomatic and pragmatic, a lot of the answers that you give. And I know, and I think that's probably right.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I'm genuinely not looking for shitty sound bites. But everybody gets something that pushes their buttons. Everybody gets something that makes them angry and something that pushes them into a space where they're not comfortable with it and they won't tolerate it. And mine was managers talking in the media about conversations that we had and back-channeling me through their mates in the media, and I wouldn't stand for it for a second. I thought that was disrespectful and disloyal. Is there anything that particularly gets you very angry, in your sphere with the game as it is at this moment?
No, the only issues I would have with players would be a lack of effort, timekeeping, discipline issues. I can handle players making mistakes. I can handle poor performances to a degree, as long as it's not through a lack of effort. They're my fundamental sort of go-tos to get me really going. But I think we've got a group of players that, again, through culture, that rarely happens. Not to say it doesn't happen at all, but it rarely happens. And the answers I'm giving you, Simon, obviously you don't know me personally.
No.
I'm not feeding you lines. My answers are genuine.
No, fine.
If I don't want to answer, I'll just...
Mate, we have different styles.
Yeah,
I'm not
from I'm not a wall where I'm actually quite honest. Obviously, there's something I can't say.
I know that, mate. I'm not suggesting that you're not. Do you look at players in this model? Because I always think one of the most difficult things for you guys as managers is, and it's my words, not yours, is I think you have to prostitute yourself sometimes. I think you have to say things to keep players on side and do things that possibly you might not want to do. And we may all have to do that in life. But do you look sometimes as a player, a person that was a player that wanted to achieve things, had an opportunity, got transferred to a club like Portsmouth that was going into the Premier League, that had your career taken away from you, and then look at the modern day player pissing and whining about how many games they've got to play? And do you ever think, pack it in? Do you guys not know you're born, the economics of the game, the opportunity, the adulation, the space that you live in?
Yeah, you'll have your moments. I'll have my moments where I think that, but I'm very much I consider myself a players manager, meaning that I don't think I've lost the feeling of what it's like to be a player and the stresses and the difficulties they face. It's very easy to make those snap judgments on people that are 18, 19, 20, but they're facing serious pressures, serious demands. Social media now is an absolute minefield for them to navigate. That's something I never had. So you can make a snap judgment, but you don't actually know the reality of their life. So I always try and scrape it back and go, what's the real issue here? What are they feeling? What stresses and strains are they under? I don't think you can generalize and sort of have that natural reaction without thinking deeper about
Do
it.
you think? I know again, these are slightly loaded questions, but you'll answer them how you want to. Do you think? Because I do. Do you think players have less fortitude today than they did 20 odd years ago?
I think they're different. Honestly, that from the players that I played with, the players now are totally different. But the natural instinct is to think negatively, but I don't. I think like the resilience needed to play under the pressures that they're under now it's a gift, it's a talent. And for me, that separates a lot of the elite players from the non-elite players. The ability to play the game. You mentioned the games earlier. It's not easy to play the games repetitively. They do the high pressure games. Then the internationals have to go away. The travel involved. Then they have to come back and be at their best for their club team again. It takes a talent and a gift to be able to be consistent with your work under those demands.
Do you think there's too many games?
No, well, definitely not for us currently.
No.
For the teams in Europe and for the internationals, it's a big demand. But I look at it this way: you're doing it for a short period of time in your life, and you're maximising your earning potential if you're a player.
Absolutely.
It comes with that cost, so I don't think I could say that there's too many games, but it is a big shift for those lads. I see it obviously with some of our players. It's a big ask.
When you hear people like Rodri suggesting that they could go out and strike, I mean, what's your reaction? My reaction to it is it's preposterous, because 90% of the money coming. I know it's not all about money, but it's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
90% of the money coming into the game is landing directly in the players' salaries.
Yeah.
There's only 3 or 4% of the players that are playing the level of games that potentially they're alluding to as a problem for them. They're at big clubs with the biggest squads that they should rotate. When you hear a player, a top player, and a brilliant player like Rodri talking about striking, what do you think to that?
Again, you understand his context. I mean, he's someone that's played literally every minute of every game, Saturday, Wednesday, for God knows how long. I mean, demands on him individually has been incredible. And then, of course, he ends up getting a serious knee injury.
But isn't that about you guys as managers taking responsibility for rotating your players?
Yeah, to a degree. But Pep, there's no better manager than looking after players than Pep. I mean, for me, he's the best the way he's managed Phil Foden into the team. So he will have a special relationship with Rodri, and he'll no doubt talk to him and understand his body. But he then gets a very serious knee injury off the back of that. So that's a really difficult situation. I don't think players will strike. I certainly hope they don't. We need to find a way to potentially manage those players better.
But would you sign a player that came to you and said, look, I want to be part of a success, but I also don't think I'm capable of playing 50, 60 games a season?
I don't think so, because I think that you're immediately starting on a sort of restrictive limit and setting negatives into the relationship. So my initial thought would be no, but could probably be swayed on that in the future.
Circumstances, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure if Mbappe was available to Newcastle and ultimately he said, I only want to play 50 games a season, you might consider, although that travelling circus might have its own problem, mightn't it? Which manager have you learnt most from?
A combination. I'm going to name a couple. Mel Machin, definitely. Sean O'Driscoll was a real inspiration for me.
Yeah.
Totally different to any other manager I'd ever seen. Kevin Bond, Harry Redknapp. I've been lucky enough, and Tony Pulis as well. Some great people at Bournemouth that elevated my career.
Who's the best manager you come up against?
Well, it has to be Pep, because you look at my manager record against him, it's absolutely awful. So I'm not alone in that.
No.
But the way he gets his team to play, so difficult to play against, so difficult to actually dominate. I think he's a long way ahead.
Last question. What, for you, constitutes success in modern day management?
I think trying to innovate. I always sort of evaluate myself against the training sessions that I deliver, because I think that's the biggest power I have to improve our performance. So I'm sort of a harsh judge, watching training back and reviewing myself and critiquing myself. And as long as I've got sort of fresh ideas and fresh impetus, the results are always, you can never guarantee them. But I think I judge myself most against that.
Winning things?
Well, of course, yeah, but that's a byproduct of
All the
doing the small things right. And that's always the long-term aim, but you have to get the process right.
Eddie, thanks for being so upfront with me, mate. Enjoyed it. Well done.
Thank you.
Up Front with me, Simon Jordan, is brought to you by William Hill. For new weekly shows, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find audio episodes on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. 18 plus, please gamble responsibly.